Humanity built skyscrapers, split the atom, and invented machines that can land on Mars. And yet, every single year, a few deeply committed individuals still manage to lose a fight with things like lawn chairs, fireworks, kitchen appliances, or their own unbelievably confident brains. So today, we're honoring a very special group of people. Not heroes, not geniuses, not victims of bad luck. These are the overachievers of bad decisions. 10 people who looked directly at a terrible idea, nodded like they'd cracked the code of the universe, and then immediately got removed from it. Think of this as a museum of terminal stupidity, a curated gallery of human beings who treated warning labels like personal insults and basic physics like a rumor started by jealous people. Every story in this video is a masterpiece, not because it was smart, but because it was stupid with commitment. Welcome to Mr. Play Dumb. Let's begin with a man who looked at a garage ladder and thought, no thanks, I'll invent death with a pulley. Case 1. The dye elevator upgrade. In a quiet suburb outside Columbus lived a man named Randall. Randall was the kind of guy who believed two things very strongly. First, professional contractors were scammers. Second, anything you could learn from a 10-minute YouTube video counted as formal engineering training. Randall's current problem was his garage loft. For years he had been climbing a narrow wooden ladder to store boxes of tools, Christmas decorations, and things he refused to throw away because they might be useful someday. The ladder annoyed him. Not because it was dangerous, because it required effort. And one afternoon, while watching a video titled, "Build Your Own Garage Cargo Lift, Easy Dye," Randall had a revelation. Why climb a ladder when you could build an elevator? Now, real cargo lifts involve steel cables, counterweights, load calculations, braking systems, and engineers who have spent several years studying the complicated relationship between gravity and staying alive. Randall used a different approach. His design included one ceiling beam, one discount store pulley, one nylon rope, and a plastic lawn chair. The concept was simple. Randall would sit in the chair, run the rope through the pulley attached to the ceiling beam, and pull himself upward like a human cargo package. And to be fair, for about 6 seconds, it worked. Randall lifted himself 2 feet off the ground and smiled proudly, convinced he had just reinvented vertical transportation. But there is a small physics issue with lifting yourself using a single pulley. You are not reducing weight. You are lifting 100% of your body mass using only your arms. Randall realized this around the 4-foot mark, when his arms began shaking like wet noodles in a windstorm. A sensible person would stop here. Randall, however, was now committed to proving that his system worked, so he kept pulling. 5 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet. And that's when the rope failed. Because the rope he bought had been designed to hold hanging flower pots, not a full-grown adult experiencing sudden confidence. For a brief, beautiful moment, Randall experienced total weightlessness. Then gravity resumed its job. The rope snapped, the chair flipped, and Randall dropped straight down onto the concrete garage floor with the elegance of a dropped washing machine. Investigators later confirmed that Randall had technically succeeded in inventing something. Not a cargo elevator, but a very efficient one-person gravity demonstration device. The unfinished pulley still hung from the ceiling for years afterward. A quiet reminder that sometimes the difference between innovation and stupidity is about 3 semesters of engineering school. Case 2. The microwave egg scientist. In the small town of Bakersfield lived a man named Todd. Todd was not a scientist, but Todd believed in science. More specifically, he believed in the kind of science you learn from late-night internet forums, comment sections, and videos filmed by people whose smoke detectors are permanently chirping in the background. One evening, Todd discovered a fascinating claim online. According to several highly confident strangers on the internet, you could boil an egg inside a microwave in under 2 minutes. Now, professional chefs and food scientists generally recommend against this idea, because microwaves heat unevenly, and eggs, being sealed biological pressure containers, tend to build internal steam. When that steam has nowhere to go, The egg can explode with surprising enthusiasm. Todd, however, had read enough internet comments to consider himself informed. So he placed an egg into a coffee mug filled with water and slid it into the microwave. 2 minutes later, the microwave beeped. The egg looked perfectly normal, which, unfortunately, was the problem. Because inside that innocent-looking shell, the water molecules had superheated into pressurized steam. It was essentially a tiny biological grenade. Now here's where Todd made the critical mistake. Instead of letting the egg cool down like a patient human being, he decided to test its doneness immediately. He picked it up, still hot, still full of trapped steam, and brought it toward his face to inspect it. At this point, a quick physics lesson becomes relevant. When a pressurized object is suddenly disturbed, especially by something like tapping or biting, it can release that pressure violently. Todd chose the biting option. The moment his teeth cracked the shell, the egg detonated. The explosion wasn't large, but it was perfectly aimed. A blast of superheated egg and steam shot directly into his mouth and throat, like a culinary flashbang. The pain was immediate and severe. Todd collapsed, choking and gasping, as the burns inside his airway triggered massive swelling. By the time emergency services arrived, the situation had escalated beyond what any omelet should reasonably be capable of doing. Doctors later explained that Todd had essentially created a pressurized steam device using breakfast, a sentence that normally does not appear in medical reports. The microwave was still sitting on the kitchen counter when investigators arrived. Quiet, innocent, and probably wondering why humanity keeps trying to turn simple kitchen appliances into experimental weapons. Case 3. The DIY Flamethrower Barbecue. In a suburb outside Phoenix lived a man named Derek. Derek loved 3 things in life: grilling meat, cold beer, and proving he could solve problems faster than anyone else. Unfortunately, Derek's definition of problem solving usually involved gasoline. One summer afternoon, Derek encountered a crisis. His charcoal grill refused to start. Now, most people faced with stubborn charcoal might try lighter cubes, a chimney starter, or, if things get desperate, simply wait a few minutes. Derek chose a different strategy. He grabbed a full gasoline can from his garage. Now, quick science refresher. Charcoal lighter fluid burns slowly and predictably. Gasoline does not. Gasoline produces highly volatile vapors which ignite instantly and expand explosively, which is why firefighters, mechanics, and literally every adult on Earth recommends never using gasoline to start a barbecue. Derek, however, had already opened the cap. He poured a generous splash over the charcoal, then another. Then, because Derek believed in commitment, a lot more. At this point, the grill was less a cooking device and more a shallow bowl of gasoline fumes waiting for a bad decision. Derek struck a match. Now here's an important detail about gasoline vapor. The flame doesn't just travel downward, it travels back toward the vapor source. And the vapor source was the open gasoline can still sitting in Derek's hand. The moment Derek leaned forward to light the grill, the flame raced through the invisible cloud of gasoline fumes like a high-speed fuse. It ignited the grill, it ignited the vapor trail, and then it ignited the gasoline container Derek was holding. The result was less barbecue ignition and more backyard flamethrower demonstration. Neighbors later reported hearing a loud whoomp sound followed by Derek shouting words that cannot legally be printed on most recipe websites. The flash fire engulfed Derek instantly, setting his shirt, hair, and remaining dignity on fire in under a second. By the time the flames died down, Derek had successfully proven something very important about outdoor cooking. Gasoline does start fires extremely quickly, just not always the one you intended. Investigators later confirmed the grill itself had survived the incident with minimal damage. The burgers Derek planned to cook that afternoon were still sitting on a plate nearby, uncooked, patiently waiting for a chef who understood the subtle difference between grilling and attempted rocket propulsion. The official cause of death was listed as severe burns, but everyone in the neighborhood knew the real cause. Derek tried to speed-run barbecue science and discovered that when it comes to gasoline, the fire usually arrives before dinner. Case 4. The Human Drone Experiment. In a quiet neighborhood outside San Diego lived a man named Kevin. Kevin was what the internet likes to call a tech enthusiast, which is a polite way of saying he bought expensive gadgets first and figured out what they did later. Drones were Kevin's newest obsession. He had spent weeks watching online videos of cinematic drone shots soaring over mountains, beaches, and city skylines. After about 12 hours of watching tutorials, Kevin had reached a very dangerous conclusion. Flying drones looked easy. So easy, in fact, that Kevin began wondering something much bigger. If a drone could lift a camera, could it lift something heavier? Now, most people would stop there, because most people understand that consumer drones are designed to lift objects weighing maybe 2 or 3 pounds. Kevin did not stop there. Kevin decided to run an experiment. His plan was simple. He owned 4 powerful hobby drones, each capable of lifting a small camera rig. So, logically, according to Kevin's brain, if one drone could lift 5 pounds, then 4 drones could lift Kevin. Now, let's pause for a quick physics lesson. Lifting a human body requires stable thrust, synchronized motors, and extremely precise control. Professional human lifting drones exist. They cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they involve teams of aerospace engineers who enjoy avoiding lawsuits. Kevin had 4 hobby drones and a roll of duct tape. The experiment took place in Kevin's backyard. He attached ropes from each drone to a climbing harness he borrowed from a friend who had no idea what it would be used for. Then he powered them up. The drones lifted slightly. Kevin's feet left the ground. For a brief moment, Kevin experienced something magical. Flight. About 3 feet of it. Neighbors later described seeing Kevin hovering awkwardly in the air like a confused marionette. And for approximately 2 seconds, Kevin was the proud inventor of the world's first duct tape helicopter. Then the problem appeared. The drones were not perfectly synchronized. One drone drifted sideways. Another struggled with the weight. A third attempted to compensate, which created something engineers call catastrophic instability. Kevin began spinning, slowly at first, then faster. Within seconds, he was rotating in midair like a malfunctioning ceiling fan. The drones, now completely overwhelmed, began shutting down one by one. Drone 1 died first, then Drone 2. Kevin dropped. The fall was short, but the landing was not graceful. He crashed into the patio furniture, bringing down 2 drones, a folding chair, and most of his remaining dignity. Investigators later determined that Kevin had technically proven something important. Humans can fly using drones, for about 3 seconds. After that, gravity usually files the final report. Case 5. The shortcut through the zoo. In Jacksonville, Florida, lived a man named Curtis. Curtis believed strongly in efficiency. Why take the long route when there's a shortcut? Why follow signs when you can follow your instincts? Unfortunately, Curtis's instincts had the navigational accuracy of a Roomba trapped under a couch. One hot afternoon, Curtis visited the local zoo with 2 friends and a backpack full of cheap beer. After several hours of wandering through exhibits and aggressively misunderstanding animal facts, Curtis decided he wanted to leave. There was only one problem. The exit was on the opposite side of the park. His friend suggested the obvious solution. Let's just follow the path. Curtis disagreed, because Curtis had spotted something interesting on the zoo map. A large grassy area between 2 walkways that looked like a perfect shortcut. There was just one small detail. That grassy area was labeled African Savanna Exhibit. Now, zoo exhibits exist for a reason. They separate humans, who are soft, fragile, and full of poor decision-making, from animals that evolved specifically to remove things from the food chain. Curtis, however, interpreted the fence surrounding the exhibit as more of a polite suggestion. He climbed it. His friends watched in disbelief as Curtis dropped into the enclosure like a man entering a mildly inconvenient backyard. Inside the exhibit were several grazing antelope, and one extremely large, extremely territorial zebra. Many people assume zebras are basically striped horses. They are not. Zebras are aggressive, unpredictable, and have a kick strong enough to break bones. Zookeepers will confirm that zebras are essentially horse-shaped bad attitudes. Curtis began confidently walking across the enclosure toward the opposite fence. At first, the animals simply watched him. Then the zebra noticed. And the zebra interpreted Curtis's presence exactly the way nature intended, as a threat. The zebra charged. Curtis had exactly 1 second to reconsider every decision that had brought him to this point. Witnesses later described seeing Curtis attempt to run. Unfortunately, zebras run about 40 miles per hour. Curtis ran about 6. The zebra reached him almost instantly. One powerful kick landed squarely in Curtis's chest, launching him backward into the dirt like a football that had made several poor life choices. Zoo staff rushed into the enclosure moments later. The zebra, satisfied that it had defended its territory, calmly returned to grazing. Curtis did technically reach the other side of the enclosure, just not in the way he had planned. The zoo later installed several additional warning signs near the fence. Not for the animals, for the humans. Because sometimes the most dangerous creature in a wildlife park is the one who thinks the rules don't apply to him. Case 6. The Firework Helmet Test. In rural Pennsylvania lived a man named Bobby. Bobby loved fireworks, not the organized professional kind launched safely from a distance. Bobby preferred the hands-on experience. Every summer, Bobby's backyard turned into what neighbors described as a low-budget military testing range. Roman candles, bottle rockets, mortars. If it exploded, Bobby was interested. Now, fireworks already come with a long list of warnings. Do not hold them. Do not aim them at people. Do not attach them to objects. Bobby interpreted these warnings as creative suggestions. One 4th of July night, after several drinks and several extremely questionable ideas, Bobby decided it was time to conduct an experiment. He wanted to know exactly how powerful fireworks really were. Specifically, how powerful they were up close. His testing method was simple. He grabbed a motorcycle helmet. Then he duct-taped several large aerial fireworks to the top of it. His logic was fascinating. The helmet would protect his head. The fireworks would shoot upward, and he would experience the ultimate first-person fireworks show. Friends watching this preparation asked a reasonable question. What happens if something goes wrong? Bobby, already halfway through another beer, gave the classic answer, "It'll be fine." Now, let's pause for a moment to discuss fireworks physics. Aerial fireworks contain explosive lift charges designed to launch shells high into the air before detonating. These charges are powerful. They are also extremely sensitive to angle and stability. When strapped to a moving human head, they become unpredictable. Bobby placed the helmet on his head. His friends backed away. Someone filmed, because of course they did. Bobby lit the fuse. For about 2 seconds, nothing happened. Then the fireworks ignited. Instead of launching cleanly upward, one tube tilted sideways. Another ignited prematurely. A third fired directly into the side of the helmet. The backyard instantly turned into a chaotic storm of sparks, explosions, and screaming. Bobby staggered across the lawn while fireworks detonated inches from his face like a patriotic disaster movie. Neighbors reported hearing rapid explosions followed by shouting that sounded less like celebration and more like regret. When the chaos ended, the helmet lay smoking on the ground. The fireworks experiment had succeeded in answering Bobby's original question. Yes, fireworks are extremely powerful up close, especially when they are attached directly to your head. Local authorities later described the incident as a deeply unnecessary demonstration of explosive physics. The video of Bobby's experiment circulated online for weeks, mostly because it answered a question humanity had never needed answered in the first place. What happens when you turn your head into a launch platform? Case 7. The Car Surfing Champion. In a suburban neighborhood outside Phoenix lived a man named Tyler. Tyler had 2 hobbies: watching action movies and believing he could do everything he saw in them. Car chases, rooftop jumps, dramatic stunts. Tyler loved all of it. But one scene in particular had always stuck with him: car surfing. You've seen it before. A hero standing on the roof of a speeding car, wind in their hair, perfectly balanced like a majestic action movie god. Tyler watched these scenes and thought something very dangerous. That doesn't look that hard. Now, in Hollywood, these stunts are performed by professionals with safety harnesses, stunt coordinators, rehearsals, and about 20 cameras capturing the best possible angle. Tyler had a different setup. One friend driving, one friend filming, and a Honda Civic that sounded like it was permanently out of breath. The experiment took place on a long, empty road outside town. Tyler climbed out of the passenger window and carefully stood on the roof while the car rolled forward. At first, everything seemed fine. The car was only going about 20 miles per hour. Tyler spread his arms dramatically, feeling like a star in his own action movie trailer. The wind hit his face. His friends cheered. And Tyler made the critical mistake of asking the driver to go faster. Now let's talk about physics for a moment. Standing upright on a moving car turns your body into something engineers call a human sail. Wind resistance increases rapidly with speed, pushing against your body with more force than most people expect. Car roofs also happen to be made of smooth metal. Smooth metal offers approximately the same traction as ice. At 35 miles per hour, Tyler started wobbling. At 40 miles per hour, the wind began pushing him backward. And at 45 miles per hour, Tyler discovered that gravity and friction had quietly decided the stunt was over. His foot slipped, his arms flailed, and the action movie fantasy ended instantly. Tyler didn't leap heroically from the vehicle. He simply slid off the back like a poorly secured piece of luggage. The pavement arrived quickly. The human body, as it turns out, is not designed for high-speed contact with asphalt. Tyler's brief career as a stunt performer ended about 3 seconds after it began. Police later reviewed the video recorded by Tyler's friend. The footage clearly showed the entire stunt, from Tyler's confident pose to the exact moment physics reminded him that Hollywood also hires insurance companies. The Honda Civic survived the experiment. The stunt career did not. And somewhere in Los Angeles, an actual stunt coordinator probably felt a sudden, unexplained headache. Case 8. The Vending Machine Revenge. In a quiet office park in Arizona, worked a man named Martin. Martin had one weakness: snacks. Specifically, the vending machine in the break room that contained his daily source of motivation, a chocolate bar and a bag of chips. Every afternoon at exactly 3:15, Martin visited the machine like it was a sacred ritual. Insert money, press button, receive happiness. But one afternoon, something went wrong. Martin inserted his dollar, pressed B7, and watched in horror as his chocolate bar dropped halfway down the rack and got stuck. Now, this is one of the oldest tragedies in modern civilization, the vending machine betrayal. Most people respond to this situation in one of 3 ways: shake the machine slightly, try another coin, accept defeat, and walk away. Martin chose option 4, revenge. At first he tapped the glass, nothing. Then he shook the machine harder, still nothing. Inside the machine, the chocolate bar remained wedged between 2 metal spirals, mocking him with silent indifference. Martin's frustration grew. This wasn't just about candy anymore. This was about principle. So Martin decided to escalate the situation. He grabbed the sides of the vending machine and rocked it forward. Now, vending machines are heavy, very heavy. The average machine weighs between 700 and 900 pounds, which means they are designed to stay exactly where they are, unless someone decides to tip them. Martin rocked the machine again, and again. Each movement brought it slightly closer to the tipping point. His coworkers watched nervously from across the break room. Someone suggested he stop. Martin did not stop, because Martin had now committed fully to the mission. One final shove. The machine tipped forward, and then gravity took control. For a brief moment, Martin probably felt victorious. The chocolate bar had finally fallen. Unfortunately, so had the machine. 900 pounds of metal, glass, and poorly priced snacks collapsed forward like a collapsing refrigerator. Martin had exactly half a second to reconsider his life choices. Then the vending machine landed directly on him. The snack inside the machine was later recovered completely intact, still in perfect condition. The investigation concluded that Martin had technically succeeded in freeing the candy bar. He simply failed to remain alive long enough to eat it. The vending machine was returned to service the following week, and management installed a new sign above it: "Please do not rock the machine," which is really just another way of saying, sometimes the snack wins. Case 9. The Bear Selfie Photographer. In the mountains of Colorado lived a man named Dylan. Dylan was not a wildlife expert, but Dylan did have something far more powerful: a smartphone, and a deep belief that every moment of life should be documented for social media. Hiking was one of Dylan's favorite hobbies, not because he enjoyed nature, but because nature made a great background. Waterfalls, cliffs, forests. Every location was simply another opportunity for content. One afternoon, Dylan was hiking along a trail known for occasional wildlife sightings. At the entrance of the trail stood a large wooden sign. It read, "Warning, Black Bear Area." Below the warning were several helpful instructions. Do not approach wildlife. Keep your distance. Never attempt to take photos near bears. These instructions exist because bears are extremely strong animals, capable of running up to 35 miles per hour, climbing trees, and removing large chunks of things they find annoying. Dylan read the sign, and then interpreted it in the same way influencers interpret common sense, as a challenge. About 20 minutes into the hike, Dylan spotted something extraordinary: a black bear near the trail. The bear was digging through the brush, completely uninterested in Dylan's existence. Most hikers would slowly back away. Dylan slowly pulled out his phone, because in Dylan's mind, this wasn't danger. This was viral content. He began walking closer and closer, until he was standing only about 15 feet away from a fully grown wild bear. Now, from a distance, bears can look calm, almost cute, but bears do not appreciate surprise photographers. The bear noticed Dylan. It stood up slightly, sniffing the air. At this point, Dylan had an excellent opportunity to leave. Instead, he turned his back to the bear, raised his phone, and tried to take a selfie. This was the moment nature decided the photo shoot was over. The bear charged. Black bears can cover short distances extremely quickly. The gap closed in seconds. Witnesses later reported hearing a shout, followed by crashing sounds from the brush. The encounter ended exactly the way wildlife experts always warn it will. The bear eventually wandered back into the forest, having successfully resolved the situation. Dylan's phone was later found near the trail. The front camera was still open. The last photo captured on the device showed something remarkable. Dylan, smiling confidently at the camera, while behind him, slightly out of focus, was a very large bear running directly toward him. The photo never made it to social media, but it did become extremely popular in wildlife safety presentations, because it perfectly demonstrates an important rule of nature. If the animal in your selfie has teeth larger than your fingers, you are not the photographer anymore. You are the content. Case 10. The Backyard Rocket Engineer. In a small town in Nevada lived a man named Carl. Carl loved two things: explosions and proving he was smarter than professional scientists. Carl had spent years watching online videos about rockets, space launches, and homemade engineering projects. After a while, he came to a very dangerous conclusion. Rocket science looked surprisingly simple. According to Carl's understanding, a rocket was basically just a tube filled with fuel that exploded in a controlled direction. So one weekend, Carl decided to build one, in his backyard. Now, real rockets are designed by teams of aerospace engineers using computer simulations, wind tunnels, and safety protocols that cost millions of dollars. Carl used something slightly different: a metal pipe, some homemade fuel mixture he found on an internet forum, and a wooden launch stand built out of old fence posts. His plan was brilliant. The rocket would fire straight upward into the sky, proving to everyone that he had successfully built a working rocket engine. He even invited a few friends to watch. Someone filmed, because when a man says the words, "Watch this," a camera always appears. Carl placed the rocket on the stand and lit the fuse. At first, everything seemed fine. The rocket began to rumble. Smoke poured from the pipe. Carl smiled proudly as the engine started roaring. But here's the thing about rockets. They rely on something called directional thrust, which only works when the rocket is perfectly balanced and stable. Carl's rocket was neither. Instead of launching straight upward, the rocket tipped sideways. For a brief moment, it hovered like it was thinking about its life choices. Then it took off horizontally, straight across Carl's backyard. The homemade rocket screamed across the grass like an angry metal missile, bounced off a fence, and rocketed directly toward Carl. Carl had exactly 1 second to realize he had accidentally invented a guided weapon system aimed at himself. The rocket struck him with the force of a high-speed pipe bomb. The explosion that followed could be heard several houses away. Investigators later found pieces of Carl's rocket scattered across the yard, along with the partially destroyed launch stand. Carl had technically succeeded in building a rocket. It did launch. It just chose a flight path that aerospace engineers refer to as extremely unfortunate. The video recorded by Carl's friends circulated online shortly afterward, mostly because it perfectly demonstrated an important truth about science. Rocket engineering is actually very impressive, but it works best when the person building the rocket understands which direction it's supposed to go. 10 people, 10 terrible ideas, and 10 moments where confidence sprinted far ahead of intelligence. A homemade elevator, a microwave egg experiment, a gasoline barbecue, a human drone flight, a zoo shortcut, a fireworks helmet, car surfing, a vending machine duel, a bear selfie, and finally, a backyard rocket program run by one extremely confident amateur. Every story followed the same formula: confidence, bad idea, physics. Physics never negotiates. Now it's your turn. Out of all 10 of these legendary bad decisions, which one deserves the crown for the dumbest idea on this list? Was it the vending machine revenge? The fireworks helmet? Or the guy who tried to take a selfie with a bear? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you've ever seen someone do something so unbelievably stupid that you had to stop and stare, tell that story too. Because humanity continues to invent new ways to lose arguments with reality every single day. If you survived this video without attempting any of these ideas, congratulations. You're already ahead of at least 10 people. Subscribe to Mr. Play Dumb for more dark comedy, terrible decisions, and educational lessons disguised as other people's mistakes. Because somewhere out there right now, someone is saying the most dangerous phrase in human history. Relax, I know what I'm doing.